Listen, but as we get into our first show, this is something that myself and Jordan have been working on for quite some time, and it's finally a reality. Welcome to the Talkin Heels Podcast. I'm your host, Nick Delahanty. I am the site expert of Keeping It Heel. My co-host, none other than my contributor, Jordan Falls. Jordan, you're new to this podcasting game. Tell me, how you feeling? You excited? You anxious? What's going on in your mind?
I'm excited. I'm ready to talk about the Tar Heels. It's my passion. I've been lucky enough to join in the Keeping It Heel crew to write for a little bit, and now ready to start a podcast. So let's talk some football.
Yes, sir. We got some football. The Carolina Tar Heels open up their season on Saturday night against South Carolina in Charlotte. It's going to be a big game for the Tar Heels. We're going to get into that and more on this show, but we're going to start off with the big storyline surrounding the Tar Heels. That's the eligibility status of Devontae Tez Walker. Walker, who is now currently deemed ineligible. That's a big loss for the Tar Heels if they don't have him. They're waiting to hear from the NCAA, but nothing has come to fruition yet. Jordan, give us your thoughts on that whole situation, and do you think that Walker's going to be able to suit up on Saturday night?
Yeah, it's really insane that we're inside 72 hours to kick off, and the NCAA has not made a decision on this. I mean, it's been going on for 3 weeks now, dragging their feet. It's looking like he's not going to be able to dress out, based on Matt's comments this week and things like that. But this is a kid that's transferred twice, but really only played at one school and really should be eligible for this game this weekend.
What really upsets me about this whole situation is, yes, we're biased because we want to see Tez Walker play with Drake May. That is the obvious answer right there. But the thing that really blows my mind is we're sitting here watching these guys who are in their 6th and 7th year in college football, and they're playing. What is it in terms of how to get Walker eligible that we're missing out on here? Because these guys have been in multiple situations and are cleared. The NCAA has to do something about this rule. And now these sudden changes that they made, how do you put them into effect when that said player, being Walker, transferred prior to those rules being put into place?
Right. And going back to the 6th year thing, we got a guy on the roster some people may know about, may not, offensive lineman Corey Grainer. He's going into his 7th year, and he's eligible Saturday night. Nobody's saying he shouldn't be eligible, but Tez should be. And the fact he transferred January 9th, the NCAA changed the rule on January 11th. It's kind of one of the things, the most common example we've seen on social media and from other experts is you go through a yield sign, and 2 days later, the Department of Transportation turned it to a stop sign, and then they write you a ticket for running a stop sign, and it wasn't a stop sign when you ran it. But it's just there's notable players out there that are in their 6th and 7th year, and the fact that Tez is not eligible is really a disappointment for several reasons. Obviously, his personal reason with his grandmother, but then he was at Kent State. His coach left under the old rules. That was a factor in determining eligibility. Why is that not being taken into consideration? Things like that. And then some Tar Heel fans or outsiders are like, oh, this is a guy from Kent State, mid-major. He's not really going to be that impactful. And that's where a lot of people are going to be wrong, is this kid is really good. He has breakaway speed. He showed that last year in the Georgia game when Kent State played him with that 56-yard breakaway touchdown. The kid's good, but obviously we're biased. We want to see him play, but he should be allowed to play compared to what's going on around the rest of the country.
And now think about this too. And it's something that, you could put into this case for Tez Walker. Coaches can leave without no penalty. So if you commit to a program due to a coach, and a lot of kids do, let's face facts. How come that same rule doesn't apply for a kid, for a student athlete who may be following that coach to another program?
Right. And feeding off of that a little bit, Tez originally committed to East Tennessee State, suffered an injury, and his scholarship was pulled from them. So a school can pull a scholarship from a kid at any time. A coach can leave at any time. But the moment the player, we're talking about the best interest of a student athlete. That's the NCAA's mission statement, is best interest of a student athlete, mental health, and things like that. But in this situation, they are not proving that they mean that. Just with they're dragging their feet and things like that.
Absolutely. Now, for your first podcast, I'm going to put you on the spot here. I'm going to ask you a question. Okay. Is Tez Walker a luxury or a necessity for the Tar Heels offense?
I think he's a luxury. With the depth of the wide receiver room, does he take Charles from good to great or great to even greater? Absolutely. But the depth in the wide receiver room, it's not like he's the only one in the wide receiver room. You still got Nate McCullum, transfer from Georgia Tech, Cody Paysauer going into his junior year, J.J. Jones and Gavin Blackwell have all showed flashes in their past. Obviously, they've not had the opportunities in the past with Drake May, with Antoine Green and Josh Downs on the roster. Those two are now in the NFL. So the wide receiver room has depth and some talent. We just haven't seen it all on the field at the same time. But obviously, Tez would be a high luxury. He would take us from good to great.
I have to agree with you there, especially given how many teams have a deeper tight end room than the Tar Heels. You look at that group, they have 3 really good tight ends that could impact you in the blocking game, could impact you in the passing game. They could do a lot of different things for you. And then you look at the receivers. You mentioned a couple of them. One of your guys is Kobe Paysauer. I think that he's in line for a breakout year, especially if Walker's out. That's a guy who has some familiar territory with May. He might be a guy that May looks too early on, especially as he tries to build a rapport with some of these new guys.
Absolutely. Paysauer was the guy last year that stepped into the slot when Josh Downs was either taking a breather on the sideline, or we saw Downs get injured or banged up a few times in games, the Wake Forest game last year. And then obviously Downs set out the bowl game and Paysauer stepped in and had a great game that night. So Paysauer and May are 2 guys that have been on campus together since day one, and they could look to connect early, especially with Walker's eligibility in question.
Now, before we get into our next topic, I'm going to ask you, will Tez Walker be available when the Tar Heels take the field on Saturday night in Charlotte?
I'm going to say no. If the NCAA hasn't made a decision at this point, I don't see them making a decision Saturday night. And the hints that the Tar Heels coaching staff have gave, he's on travel, he's going to wear his uniform on the sideline. They'll have his equipment if he's eligible. It doesn't seem like they're very optimistic at this point. They were optimistic early in the process. I don't think so much anymore.
I'm going to go against you here. I'm going to keep the optimism. I'm going to say that the NCAA is going to realize that they wronged this kid and give Drake May a 21st birthday present by allowing Walker to play in this game. I think that he's going to suit up. I think it's going to be a last-minute decision. You're going to hear something on Thursday or Friday, but Tez Walker is going to be in the lineup for the Tar Heels. I'm holding on that optimism. I hope I'm right. If I'm wrong, I wouldn't be surprised, but let's hope that Tez Walker can make an impact for the Tar Heels in week 1. Now, before we get into South Carolina, and that's the big game coming up on the schedule, what are your expectations for this team this year? Let's remember, last year, Drake May took the college football world by storm. The Tar Heels defense was a big issue. What do you see this year coming from Mac Brown and his team?
I think that the expectation for a lot of Carolina fans is going to be trying to keep their expectations low, given the history. We've covered on Keeping It Healed, the curse of the top 25 preseason poll. Recently, that is obviously holding people back, keeping people reserved. But with the expectation of Drake May, the preseason Heisman candidacy, returning ACC Player of the Year, preseason Player of the Year for 2023, probably the greatest quarterback that North Carolina's ever had, and returning the team that we had from last year, the expectations have to be high. If it's not an ACC championship berth, much less ACC championship win, I feel like the expectations have been failed with the preseason hype. And preseason hype is something that has honed at Chapel Hill lately, not only from the football team, but from the basketball team. We know that, but that can hurt sometimes. But I feel like with the situation and the players returning and the talent, you have to have high expectations for this team.
Listen, I don't want to bring up a bad memory for you, but we were talking about it the other day, and I have to. We talked about that Virginia Tech game when Sam Howell was quarterback. It seems like when there's high expectations, this program just hasn't lived up to them.
Correct. And I was at the Virginia Tech game, returning offense. You had high hopes with Sam Howell. Again, very similar. I referenced it just in the day's article, but very similar references between 2021 and 2023 with Sam Howell, preseason, Heisman possibility, Drake May, Heisman possibility. Both had great first years, and Yeah, they didn't live up to hype. So hopefully Drake can right the ship here.
Now, Drake can't do it alone, and we know that. And yes, it may look like that in the way that everybody talks about Drake May. It's like he's on the field alone. But if you had to pinpoint a specific unit on the offensive side of the ball that you're looking at to say, hey, this group has to step up, which group is it?
Early on in August, I had said the running back unit because Drake was the leading rusher last year. He can't be the leading rusher this year. I'm starting to lean toward the offensive line up front. They got to protect Drake May. They got to keep him on his feet. They can't let him get hit and give him time to throw, especially to find these receivers, especially early on in the season, with the exception of Pacehour and maybe J.J. Jones a little bit. This is a whole new wide receiver core. He's going to need time to adjust, get chemistry right, timing right with these guys. And the offensive line providing pass protection will be a huge help.
And I think to kind of go with your point there, I think the maturity of Drake May is going to help as well, because let's call a spade a spade. A lot of the sacks that May took were due to him running out of the pocket, trying to make a play. I think a more mature Drake May is going to understand, I need to throw the ball. I need to get out of the pocket. And there's not going to be that middle ground where he's going to have that inconsistency. And I think that's going to help the offensive line for sure. I'm going to go with the running backs here. Just to, number one, to be different from what you're talking about with the O-line. But again, you mentioned it. Drake May cannot be the Tar Heels leading rusher. That just can't happen. He can't take multiple hits running the football. We saw him try to leap over defenders last year. I hope that he never does that again. But the running back group, they're very talented. They're probably 5 deep in that room. One of them has to step up and be the lead guy. And could it be British Brooks? Could it be Omarion Hampton? Could it be George Pettaway? Who knows? But one of them has to step up and be that lead guy that the Tar Heels so desperately have missed since Ty Chandler left.
Yep, exactly. And George Pettaway, we don't know if we'll see him at running back or wide receiver with some changes going on, but somebody has to step up. British Brooks, we really don't know a lot about, other than the NC State game in 2021 where he ran for like 120 yards, I believe. We haven't seen much. We saw him in the Duke's Mayonnaise Bowl against South Carolina. Nobody wants to relive that game, so we're not even going to go there. But, I mean, how does he react? He's listed as the RB1 on the depth chart that was released on Monday. Will he stay RB1? How does he perform coming off a season-ending injury last year where he missed the whole year? Is he 100%? Is he back to football strength and conditioning? Be interesting to see who steps up. Elijah Green was that guy last year that seemed to catch the eye. He still wasn't leading rusher. Drake May was. But where does the running back room fall? Who will we have a workhorse running back? Or will it be a strictly running back by committee, 4 or 5 guys that run for 50 yards each a game? Can that get the job done? Maybe. You're keeping fresh legs on the field at all times. Hopefully, if that's the game plan, maybe. But somebody's got to step up.
Yeah, last time we saw a running back by committee, it was Javonte Williams and Michael Carter, and I think Tar Heels fans remember that worked out pretty well. So both of those guys were outstanding. Hopefully the Tar Heels could replicate that if that's the route they're going to go. But another thing to remember is the Tar Heels have a new offensive coordinator. Phil Longo's no longer in Chapel Hill. So we're going to have to see how this offense looks under new direction. Are they going to make drastic changes? Is there going to be different sets that they're going to use? Are they going to rely on multiple backs? Or are one of these backs more fit for the offensive scheme they're going to run and will just break out?
Right. And Freddie Kitchens has a run mentality. He's going to want to run the football. So hopefully he can keep Longo's offense somewhat intact to help Drake May with the air raid type spread offense, but then also implement that run and kind of get a little bit of mix between a spread, air raid, and a pro style offense. Maybe mix them up a little bit and really cause some problems for some defenses if you can do that.
It's safe to say this group has a lot of talent in it. And you know what? It wouldn't be a surprise if the Tar Heels have another powerful offensive year once again in 2023. Now, let's go to the side that's given us headaches for years now, the defensive side of the football. The Tar Heels were one of the worst defenses in the country last year. They're going to have a couple of new faces coming into Chapel Hill. Again, just like the offense, what unit are you most looking at and saying this group has to be better in order for the defense to improve?
I think I'm gonna go one, and you're gonna go one. I'm gonna go defensive line. They got pressure up front and get pressure on the quarterback, get pressure on the running game, move the line of scrimmage. You have to win the trenches in college football. There's no other way around it. Last year, a lot of fans pointed at the defensive backs, and not saying they weren't all the problem, but they also can't cover for 9 seconds of play. So you gotta get pressure up front. I think we're good at linebacker for sure. I think we returned to the best linebackers in the country, but defensive line has to get pressure up front.
I have to agree with you there, especially because the secondary gets so much of the blame, and people don't realize that stems from having a bad pass rush. If you have a good pass rush and you're making it hard for the quarterback to see his options, it's going to rush throws, it's going to force mistakes, and that's where the secondary jumps on their opportunities. Now, if they're dropping easy interceptions, you're saying the secondary stinks, but the defensive line has to be that unit that sparks the defense, stopping the run game, not allowing the big play by getting to the quarterback. These are all crucial steps. They have the guys who could do it. They have athletes on that unit that are capable. It's just a matter of them putting it all to fruition.
Yeah, speaking of athletes, Des Evans is a guy that has to break out this year. He's going to his senior year. When he committed to Carolina, we were ecstatic, and it just feels like he has not lived up to that expectation of that defensive end. When he committed, people were comparing him to Julius Peppers, in-state recruit, big-time 5-star recruit, and he just hasn't lived up to the hype. And that's the one guy that has to lead this unit. The other guys will be Amari Gainer from Florida State. If we see him, how much, we don't know. He's second string on the depth chart right now behind Camion Rucker. But he's a guy that could, later on in the year, become a factor.
Listen, I got to tell this quick story about Des Evans. I was walking down Chapel Hill. It was November last year, and he was in a sling because he had the shoulder injury. And just walking past him, he's a physical presence. Like, you look at this guy, and you're like, this is a typical edge rusher. This guy could get to the quarterback just by his stature. You know, if he could live up to that potential that we all thought he had coming in, and that he still can achieve, he's going to jump up some NFL draft boards.
Yeah, he's 6'6", 275 is what he's listed on the depth chart, and he really is. He really can be a presence on the outside. The comparisons to Peppers aren't outrageous. It's just he hasn't lived up to the hype, and it kind of fits the mantra that we've been talking about the whole time. The whole program hasn't lived up to the hype for years, so why not everybody else just fall in line? But this year, something has to change.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And hopefully the guys that return can kind of learn in that second year of Gene Chizik's defense, and the new guys can add some important depth that is for sure going to be needed. Now, South Carolina, week 1, you're actually going to be in the building.
Yes.
And you're going to be at College Game Day.
Going to College Game Day, going to be at the game. Very excited. Been to College Game Day one other time, was before the LSU game in 2010 in Atlanta. Obviously, our College Game Day past is not great. 0-2 all time, 1997 against Florida State, and LSU in 2010. But LSU 2010 resembles this year a little bit. You know, suspensions that year. Tea's out this year, possibly. So, but hopefully some times can change. And it doesn't feel like the record. I don't know the record off my top of the head in Charlotte, but it doesn't feel like our record in Charlotte's been too good as of late, outside that 2019 opening game against South Carolina when Sam Howell made his debut.
Now, what are you going to be looking for in the crowd in Charlotte? Now, maybe we should ask the fans what your poster should say when you go to College Game Day. You know, we want you to get on TV. That's the goal.
Yeah. If anybody has any creative game day sign ideas, shoot them my way. Be happy to, if you don't have the opportunity to go to game day, but would like to have a part in making a sign, send it my way for sure. As far as in the crowd Saturday night, everybody's going to be excited to see Drake May, obviously. Everybody's expecting an offensive shootout with Spencer Rattler. He finished the year really strong last year with their win over Tennessee, and then they competed well against Notre Dame in the bowl game. I think it goes back to the defense. The first 2 drives of the game are going to be really huge as far as setting the tone for the game and possibly for the season for the program as a whole. Can the defense get a 3 and out? Can the defense get a big third down stop? It seemed like last year, every time it was 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, somebody broken assignment, something, just makes you shake your hand and go, oh no, not again. So hopefully the first 2-3 drives of the game can set the tone. And if the defense comes out and gets some stops, the Carolina fans that are in attendance might make it a little bit harder for South Carolina to operate on offense and get a little bit louder. But if it turns into a shootout, it's going to just be like, well, every time Drake has the ball, he has to go score a touchdown.
Now, you might call me crazy, but this game is going to be dictated by the coin toss.
Okay.
I want to see your reaction there. I'm going to tell you why. I'm gonna tell you why. Carolina needs to win the toss and they need to take the ball.
Okay.
They need to get Drake May on the field first. Because why? It puts pressure on the offense. You got to score. But if they can get out to a lead, even if it's 3-0, it takes a little bit of the pressure off of that defensive unit that has so much pressure coming in. You don't want them to go on the field right away and Rattler tear them up. You want to avoid that. You don't want to go down 7-0 because that's going to be a recipe for disaster. Let May get in the game. Let those guys be on the sideline and be like, all right, listen, we have one of the best quarterbacks in the country. He's going to take care of us. We got to help him. Then you bring your defense out on the field. Am I crazy for that?
A little. I see there's arguments on both sides. You could say you defer the coin toss, get a defense to stop, and then Drake goes down and scores, and you've already got a 3-and-out or a stop, and you're up 7-0. So you've traded possessions and you're up. There's arguments on both sides. Be interested to see what happens on Saturday night for sure on that front.
I'm just so nervous about it because every time that I wish for the defense to get a stop, they let me down. So I want to avoid that right away. I want to go Drake May. I want to see what he could do right away. I wanted to have an early Heisman moment where everybody's like, oh my goodness, Drake May did this, and get the season off on a good note.
Another thing for Saturday night is going to be coaching, obviously. We all trust Mac and whatnot, but the last few times we've heard after a loss it's been, we weren't prepared for this or we didn't expect to see this. We saw in the Clemson game, post-game, he said, we didn't expect to see Cade Klubnik. Why they didn't expect to see Cade, we have no idea. Everybody knew after the South Carolina game that Clemson was going to look at playing Cade in the ACC championship game. So not being ready for that. Or against Georgia Tech, we were ready for the third-string quarterback, but not their fourth-string. You had in college football, you had to be prepared for everything, every situation. In the 2020, we said we wasn't going to relive it. Last time these two teams met in 2021 Duke's Mayo Bowl, Dakereon Jordan played quarterback. He played quarterback in high school, so not being prepared for him to play quarterback in that game was when South Carolina had a major quarterback issue. That should have been somewhat expected. Maybe not every play, but the first play of the game, he threw a 70-yard touchdown pass. So being prepared is going to be something big for the coaching staff and the team as a whole for Saturday night. Joyner still on the team. Do we see some Wildcat? Is it mostly Rattler? They need to be prepared for almost every situation.
And one thing that scares me, and I think you actually sent it to me, was them talking about how they really have nothing to go off of because of the new offensive coordinator. That's a really big concern because what are they focusing on? Are they looking at old tape of Rattler and seeing what he likes to do? Maybe getting an idea of some of the wrinkles they'll keep in. Are they looking at that game against Carolina a couple years ago where they ran the Wildcat? Are they preparing for that? I would love to know what's in their mindset right now as to how they're preparing for this South Carolina offense.
Yeah, and on the flip side, another scary part is they've said on the offensive side they have 2 game plans. Obviously, you have to be prepared for Tez to play. How do you have 2 game plans? It's going to be a little bit tricky because it's going to be hard to keep 11 guys on the same page for a whole game. If you go in Saturday, you're like, oh, well, I mean, they wake up Saturday morning like, Tez ain't playing. Okay, we're implementing this game plan. Well, Saturday at 3:30, Tez is ruled eligible. Hey, we're flipping to this game plan. Somebody's likely to get confused. I mean, we forget these are 18 to 22-year-olds. They're not superhumans or anything like that. They might have great memories, but they're not perfect. And so if you have different game plans with different snap counts, different routes, that gets a little worrisome a little bit. And so it's going to be interesting to see how the coaching staff and the offense handles that situation.
One thing that tells me, having 2 offensive game plans, is that the coaching staff doesn't believe they have anybody on the roster who could fill Tez Walker's shoes. And that's no disrespect to the other receivers, but they're telling you that Tez Walker is elite. We have plays that are designed for him, that only work for his size, skill, speed, ability.
Yeah.
They're going into it. They don't want to have somebody play out of position and not be able to fill that role, because what's going to happen? The scrutiny is going to come. They want to make sure they put the players in the best position to succeed. And Walker's the only guy they have on that roster that could do that. So that is a little bit concerning, because like we know, it could be a coin toss. It could be 10 minutes before the game and the NCAA says, oh, does Tess have his gear out? We kind of figured he may be able to play tonight. Good luck.
Right, exactly. And I guess it goes back to the original question: is he a luxury or necessity? The coaching staff might think it's a necessity if they have 2 game plans. I think there's talent there in the wide receiver room that they can get by. Obviously, you don't want to get by in college football, but I think they could. And I don't think it will necessarily kill them Saturday night, but obviously it would help.
The opportunity comes around. You never know who's going to take the advantage of it. Now, game outcome. We talked about it in our Keeping a Heel article. We're going to touch on that in a minute. Who do you have winning this game? What's your score? Why do you feel that way?
I got South Carolina winning 38-34. I hate doing that. Partially is because I'm a little superstitious. So I don't want to jinx it if we are going to win, because I'm going to the game. Part of it is keeping expectations low. We've talked about that. And part of it is just we've been giving nothing to expect otherwise. From the program, from the defense. We all hope that the defense has got better. They say they have. We've seen 2 all accesses on ACC Network where they've spent the majority of the time on the defense, which is shocking with the hype around Drake May, that they're like, oh, we're not going to focus on Drake. We're going to go over here to the defense where it was the worst unit last year. But they've talked about how much better they've improved and things like that. Until we see it on the field, it doesn't matter. It just doesn't. So keeping expectations low. I have PTSD from 2021 still. So I'm just 38-34. I do expect a shootout, but I think it comes down to the fact that the Carolina defense just cannot get a stop when they need one.
I think that this is going to be a great test for the Tar Heels. And Mac Brown said they tried to get a week 0. They couldn't get it. They couldn't get it approved by the NCAA. But what better way to test where you are than with a top 25 team, or a team that just missed being in the top 25 on the border? A few people will say that they should be in it, given the talent that they have back. But you're playing a team that has a top 25 potential right away, and it's in non-conference action. A game that, yes, it might hurt you come bowl time. It might hurt you if you're competing for the college football playoff. But for Carolina, they have nothing to lose. This is a game where they could see what they have and how they're going to move forward from it. It's a real test. It's getting these guys in game action against somebody else. So do I think Carolina's going to win? I'm going to say no. I think they lose in a slugfest 45-42. But I do think that this game is going to tell us a lot about this team, and it's going to help the coaching staff moving forward to put us in a spot where, you know what, it's not the end of the world if they do lose this game.
Yeah, exactly. It's not the thing that we've heard around the program in the offseason is getting better from last year, improving, trying to erase that 0-4 finish. And the ultimate goal is to win a ACC championship. Hasn't been done in 42 years in Chapel Hill. 43 years, 1980, 1981. Yeah, so that's ultimately the goal. College football playoff would be great. I don't think we're at that point to talk about it. Even though we have Drake May, I feel like the other units have to be elevated a little bit to even start talking about that. Win Saturday night, maybe have a favorable schedule coming out of September, going into the first week in October. Then we can talk and see where we're at, get through the Miami game and things like that. But that's looking way down the road. If any Carolina fan has any hope of that, you gotta win Saturday night. But the ultimate goal within the program seems to be let's get back to the ACC championship and let's erase that 39-10 loss with Clemson last year.
I agree with you. It has to be baby steps. As much as everybody thinks that Drake May is going to pull a Vince Young and lead Carolina to the national title game, calm the expectations. This is not that type of team. What the expectation should be is to get to that ACC title game and, like you said, avenge that loss, that ugly loss that they suffered to Clemson. You might see Clemson in that game again. You might see Florida State, but get there. Get there, win it. Add to the program, build that way. Baby steps happen. You got to take them, and this is the perfect way to do it. Now, let's talk about the schedule a minute. We released on Keeping It Heel, and we're going to reference our stuff a lot on here. We talked about the schedule. We gave our predictions. Give everybody your final record and kind of identify some of the games that you think, this
Key
game
games,
scares me a little bit.
possibly, yeah. Final record, I have them at 9-3, which is right over the Vegas under 8.5 line. I'm leaning on the 9 side. I think they still make the ACC championship with that potentially, depending on how records and tiebreakers fall with no divisions this year. Games that scare me, obviously South Carolina Saturday night. We've already addressed that. I had them losing that one. In the ACC, I'm gonna jump to the big one first. Clemson is obviously the one on the schedule at the end of the year, and that finish, Clemson State on the road, is tough. But Clemson, Clemson is still, they might be having a quote unquote down year. They're still one of the elite programs in college football and in the ACC. I just don't think we have the talent to get over that game. The other two games on my radar that are scary games. Miami at home. I have us winning that game, but it could be tight. If it ends up being if we end up rolling there with a nice 5-2, 6-1 record type situation, then could obviously be a night game. Crowd could play a factor. Do have us winning the Miami game, but it's definitely a scary game. And then the other one that feels a trap game going into a bye week coming out of the non-conference schedule is Pittsburgh on the road. A team that always seems to play us tough. Pat Narduzzi is a good coach who always seems to have a game plan for us. Gave Drake May or Sam Howell some trouble 2 years ago, and could possibly have something up his sleeve to give Drake May some problems on the road. And I have us losing that game too. So to finish 9-3 and 6-2 in ACC.
Does that get them into the title game?
Potentially. Clemson plays Florida State, so Clemson beats Florida State. That hands Florida State a loss, and Florida State also plays Miami and Duke. And Duke is not a team to sleep on this year by no means. But if Florida State could lose one of those two games, then Carolina and Florida State would be tied without a head-to-head game. And if it came down to the head-to-head tiebreaker being the Miami game, if Carolina would win that, Florida State would lose it. I think that gets them in at 6-2.
So we're going to go on the side of your prediction puts them in the ACC title game.
That's what I'm going with. It's going to have to be against Clemson. I don't see a scenario where they play Florida State.
I don't either. Now, in my prediction, I went 8-4 on a regular season. I don't think that gets them into the ACC title game.
Keeping expectations low.
I'm keeping the expectations low. If they win 10 games, I'm going to come back and be like, I was the reverse curse. Like,
doesn't matter. Nobody's going to complain. Great.
I will go 0-12 next year if it means they're going to get to the ACC title game every year. I do not mind it. I will look bad. I will be the reverse curse. But I went 8-4. I have them losing. Yeah, taking one for the team guy right here. So I have them losing to South Carolina on opening night, which again I think is a toss up. I think that they can win that game. I have them losing at Pittsburgh. That has trap game written all over it for me, just like it did for you. I have them losing to Miami at home. I feel like there's always one home disappointing game, and it's going to be that one. And then I have them losing to Clemson. NC State is a toss-up. That's going to be a tough game, especially on the road late in the year. Duke is no pushover, like you mentioned. I'm just so happy we don't have to go to App State this year. I'm happy that game is in Chapel Hill. Do I think that this team can win more than 8 games? Yeah, I do. I firmly believe it. But they have to prove it on the defensive side of the ball. And until they do, they're going to stay around where they've been the last couple of years.
Yeah, and we've talked about so many close games, Pitt, Miami. The problem last year, they won some of them going into November 9-1, but winning these close games is where you get in trouble, especially in college football. It got them in trouble against Georgia Tech, against NC State, and against Oregon. You got to win these close games, and you got to put yourself in a position not to be in close games, especially when you're more talented. And Carolina has the talent. There's no question about that. On both sides of the ball, the defense might not have shown it in the past. They have the talent. They just got to put it on the field. But to go into Pitt and not be in a close game, Miami, it's going to be a close game. That's always a close game. But the Duke, the State game, you're more talented than these guys, or you should be. Don't get into dogfights, or don't get in the red zone and fail to score. You have to score in the red zone. Even if it's 3 points. There were times last year we didn't come out of the red zone with 3 points because we didn't trust the kicking game, or we went for on 4th down and just didn't happen. So taking advantage of those situations, taking advantage of every point we can get, and just trying to avoid close games if at all possible in our favor.
Absolutely. Now, if you had to take Drake May and Cedric Gray out of the mix, who is the third most important player on this roster?
That's a tough one. There's a lot of a lot of guys that could compete for that third spot. We've talked about the running back room stepping up. Power Eccles, Des Evans, one of those two guys would probably be my pick on the defensive side. As far as returning experience and things like that, we've got some transfers that came in. Elijah Hussey that could compete for that third spot is most important. And then offensively, Cody Paysar, we've talked about him and things like that. Nate McCullum, Tez Walker, if he's in the mix, then we're going Tez Walker. But if we're saying he's ineligible, then I feel like there's any group of guys that could compete for that third spot. But if Tez is eligible, then it's Tez.
I'm going to go with one of the running backs. I'm going to say Omarion Hampton is going to be the guy who steps up as the lead back. The kid's a physical freak in the nicest possible way you could say. He has the skill set. I think the line's going to be better. They have experience together. They have some depth. I really do think that the pressure is going to be on that running game, and Hampton's going to be the guy to secure the job. We saw flashes of it last year. He didn't necessarily put it all together, but I think that in year two, it's just going to be one of those years where we're going to look back and be like, this kid's a monster. He's going to be in line for another monster year the following year and so on, and potentially be like Javonte Williams and Michael Carter and be in that draft conversation.
Potentially, and Hampton's a guy, myself included, a lot of people forgot about. He didn't really stand out this year. Last year he showed moments, ended up falling behind Elijah Green, but a lot of people forget he was only a freshman last year. He's a sophomore this year. Hopefully, Mack even referenced it Monday in his press conference. Hopefully he learned from some of those moments. He's maybe matured a little bit and can really take over. Right now he's listed as an or to British Brooks on the first team depth chart. So if Brooks for some reason doesn't bounce back in 2023 like we expect him to from his 2021 campaign, then Hampton can certainly be the guy that we could see Hampton as a running back that's on first and second down, and then we could see Elijah Green as the receiving back on third down, or even British Brooks as a pass protection back. There's plenty of options there. Hampton's a good pick.
Now, before we wrap up our first episode, and again, I've been beaming this whole show because, I'm excited to talk Tar Heels with you. There are two things that I want
for hours.
Oh, we could. We do all the time. If they saw our text feed, they'd be like, man, these two are nuts. They just love their Tar Heels. Wait till basketball season comes, because it's going to probably be even worse because you have football and basketball going on at least a little bit together. But there are two things I want to discuss. Number one, let's give them a little bit more of an insight on what's going on with our show. We plan on having a weekly segment similar to this. We'll be live. We'll give it to you on YouTube. Our show links will be released via Keeping It Heel on social media and all the good stuff. So make sure you follow and subscribe to our YouTube channel to get the latest episodes from us. We're going to talk about a little bit of everything. Tonight was football. Next week might be soccer and field hockey. They have a pretty good coach who was a legendary player in her time. But, the topics are going to range by week. And we hope that you join in on our conversation and that you follow along with us as we begin this journey, because this is something that, and Jordan can tell you, we've been working on essentially since he joined our staff.
Yeah, we've been talking about this since May. Obviously, with the summer, it's a little bit dead time, but something we want to get started. Football is obviously what the fan base probably wants to hear about the most, but we want to give you insight to the other Olympic sports that deserve the attention, that are well-recognized programs. Field hockey, defending national champions. Women's soccer has a great history. We all know that, but we want to give you insight to all those sports that you might not be able to keep up with on a weekly basis as in detail as football when they're playing once a week. We want to bring all that to you.
And we're not going to just keep it to ourselves. It's just not going to be a two-guy show here. We're going to have guests for you. We're going to expand off of this. Some of your favorite Tar Heel athletes, some of your favorite Tar Heel commits. We have some big things planned, so make sure you stay tuned as to what's going to go on with our show. Now, on a more serious note, and we hate to have to talk about something like this, but tragedy hit the University of North Carolina this past week. a professor was killed in a tragic shooting on campus. Campus went on lockdown, a very scary situation. So, of course, I'll let Jordan speak as well. But on behalf of our team and the Keeping It Heel team, we want to send our condolences to the families and the North Carolina community that was affected by this tragedy.
Yeah, it's a really sad event that we're still having to deal with this. And schools, there was a lot in Chapel Hill, the community. It was a lot. It was the first day of school for a lot of people, and it's just really sad event that kindergartners are going to school and their first day is they're on lockdown. But we send our condolences and prayers to the family of the faculty member that was lost.
And hopefully better days are ahead, and especially in Carolina, hopefully the sky will be Carolina blue and the sun will be out. And again, what better way to kind of get past this and move forward than by enjoying some Carolina football?
Yeah, hopefully Saturday will bring a little bit of life back to the university and give people a chance to attend a game and not too far from campus. And hopefully it can be something that can be a relief.
Hopefully. Now, that's going to be it for our first ever episode of the Talkin Heels podcast. Jordan, it was fun, man.
Yeah, it's been a blast. And like I said, we could have talked for hours, had plenty of, we had so many topics, so many different directions we could have went, but wanted to focus mainly on the football game this weekend. Sets the tone for the season, really. So we'll hope me and Nick are wrong on our predictions. Hopefully it's a blowout in our favor and it's not close and we can relax in the stands on Saturday night. If you're going to be there, hit me up and whatnot. We'll meet up. I'll be at game day. You got any game day ideas, send them my way. And we'll be doing this weekly.
Listen, if they win this week, I'll write next to my name on the screen, Nick Delahanty, I was wrong. I will take full blame for it. As long as the Carolina Tar Heels win and we have something positive to talk about next week, I'm all for it.
Yeah, I'll do the same if we have to. If that's the deal we have to make, sign me up. Like let's go. But we'll see for sure. And be exciting Saturday night. Hopefully it's a great atmosphere. I hope Tar Heel Nation shows out. There's been a lot of off-season talk in the. I live in South Carolina, so there's been a lot of off-season talk in South Carolina that the Gamecock fans are going to have an 80% crowd capacity compared to the Tar Heel fans. And I really hope that's not the case. I hope that's at least close to 50-50 to be a good neutral site game. Charlotte's not far from either school. It's actually closer to South Carolina, but there's no reason that Tar Heel fans should not be in the stadium Saturday night, no matter what your expectations are. Get your tickets. There's plenty out there on Ticketmaster and StubHub, and we need to be loud Saturday night for our guys.
You heard the man. Get out to Charlotte. If you're in the area, wear your Carolina blue. Go support the boys as they take on South Carolina. Once again, this is going to wrap up our show, the first ever episode of the Talkin Heels podcast. That's Jordan Falls. I'm Nick Delahanty. We'll talk to you guys really soon.